Hello, welcome back. My name is Ari and today we are going to go over my book haul from 2 years ago this month, see what I bought and see if there's any books on there that I haven't read yet. Then at the end of the vlog, I'm going to read at least one of them. So let's scooch over this way and then I'm going to pop up the video here. Hello, welcome back. My name is Ari and today we are going to do a haul. It's The Last Witch by, I'm not gonna say his name because I can't pronounce it, but this is the first book in the Witcher series. Alright, so the first book that I hauled was The Last Wish by Shabowski. I butchered that, but brave enough to pronounce it this time. I have read that. I read that a while ago. I haven't continued on with the Witcher series, but I did read the first book in the Witcher series. I ended up buying, which was Coffee Days, Whiskey Nights by Cyrus Parker. This is a book of poetry. Okay, the next book on here was Coffee Days, Whiskey Nights by Cyrus Parker. This was something I had read before purchasing it, so obviously I've read it. It's still a really, really good poetry collection, so if you want poetry about depression, I recommend this one. And then the final book I bought was The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Alright, the third one is The House in the Cerulean Sea. I have read that. I have read its sequel-ish thing. It's not really a sequel, but yes, I read it. Moving on. My next stack looks like this. We are going to go through this nonfiction pile. Now this one's, it's gonna be funny. There's a lot of like very broad topics in here. So we're gonna start at the top book, which is Men Explain Things to Me by Rebecca Solnit, I think is her name. Alright, the first one in my pile of nonfiction books is Men Explain Things to Me by Rebecca Solnit. I read it. It was okay. It was about mansplaining, kind of. It was just a group of essays. Next up is The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. Alright, next up is The Color of Law. That is something that I have not read, so I still have it. This is potentially on my TBR for this month. Next one is one of the funny ones, and that is When Hitler Took Cocaine and Lenin Lost His Brain. And it's just like weird facts about famous people in history. Alright, next up, When Hitler Took Cocaine and Lenin Lost His Brain. Haven't read this one either. Next up is a book called No Visible Bruises by Rachel Louise Snyder. Alright, this one, No Visible Bruises, by Rachel Louise Snyder. I have not read this one either. I probably won't read this one this month because this sounds super fucking depressing and I don't want to deal with it right now. Next up is This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson. Juno Dawson is a trans author and I have no idea what this book is about, but it is very gay, so I'm excited to read it eventually. Alright, next up is This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson. I have read that. I think it is a very good book for young white gay men and pretty much nobody else. So if you were a child, teen, early 20s who is gay, or you are the parent of somebody who is gay, I would recommend this book. But if you're not young, white, and gay, it's not. There's better books that cover a more vastly diverse range. This one is a little dated. The next two books are very similar and I didn't know which one is the better pick, so I bought both of them, and they're both about black women's hair. And this is The Tangled History of Black Hair Culture called Twisted, and then this is Hair Story, Untangling the Roots of Black Hair in America. Alright, next up I have Twisted and Hair Story. I have read Twisted. I have not read Hair Story. So Hair Story, potentially on my TBR. Twisted was educational, but definitely written for like academic purposes and not necessarily entertaining.
Next up is a book called Eloquent Rage.
Alright, next up I've got Eloquent Rage by Brittany Cooper. I have not read that, so that is a potential one. Another potential one on my TBR list. There's a lot of nonfiction that I bought 2 years ago and still haven't read.
Next up is a book called Bias, and this by Jennifer Eberhardt, I guess.
Alright, next one is Biased by Jennifer Eberhardt. This is a scientist who is researching bias. So, scientific approach, could be really dry, could be really interesting. I've heard very good things about this one.
This is The Power of Habit. Supposedly it's why we form habits and not how to form habits.
Alright, and the final one in this group is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. I obviously haven't read this one. This one didn't even sound interesting to me when I bought it, so it hasn't been put on the TBR. Shocking.
Alright, the next book in here is the book that came in my unplugged book box, and that was The Lost Puzzler.
So the next section was book box books. The first one in there was The Lost Published. The first one in there was The Lost Puzzler by Ilkless. I read this one. I liked it. I have this on my series to continue and haven't continued it yet, but I have the second book in this series, which is The Puzzler's War. It's over there on my TBR.
My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix.
Alright, the next book up there was from Brilliant Book Monthly, which is a subscription that I got for 6 months. I've read all of the books in this subscription. I think I made a video on it already. I think. It would have been a while ago. But the first book in that subscription was My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. That was a 5-star read for me. So, very good job for that subscription. I'm not going to actually give them credit for that because they sent me Gideon the Ninth, which they sent me Gideon the Ninth blind. That's one of my favorite books of all time. And I asked to replace it with My Best Friend's Exorcism because I like the cover.
For this month's book, they sent me The Remaking by Clay McLeod Chapman.
Alright, the other book they sent me was The Remaking. It was like a 3-star book. Very forgettable. It was like a ghost story, and then they made it into a book, and then they made it into a movie, and then they made a sequel, and then there's a podcast or something like that. And then there was like issues and hauntings associated with every time they remade it. It wasn't great.
Final thing in here is my Book of the Month Club book. It is the last story of Mina Lee. I probably should have skipped this month, but this is what I went with.
Alright, my Book of the Month Club book for that month 2 years ago was The Last Story of Mina Lee. I DNF'd this. It was awful. Mina Lee treated her mother so bad, and I just didn't want to read about it. So, DNF'd that one. Alright, and that's everything. For this month, I've got a lot of nonfiction to choose from. So I am going to choose one of these books, read it, come back, and tell you what I thought about it. And the rest of them are going back on my shelf to be read at another time. Let's see which book I chose and what I thought about it. Alright, so I ended up listening to Biased by Jennifer Eberhardt, Dr. Jennifer Eberhardt, and I said listening to because I had this as an audiobook and a physical copy, so I listened to this on my drive to and from work over this month. This was really good. This is a 5-star book. It is very informative, but not boring, because a lot of times you will find books like this that are about hard-hitting topics or informative information. Wow. Hard-hitting topics that are informative that are boring because they're written for an academic audience. This is not written for academia, or it could be, but it's written in a very layman's terms, a very conversational way, easy for anybody to pick up, understand, and like learn something. So this is basically just the study of bias. Dr. Barthard is a social scientist, so she like actually does scientific studies on how society works with each other. And anytime she makes a statement in this book where it's like, okay, this is a racist action. Are we sure it's racist? Yes, there has been a very, very scientific study on it that proves that these things are actually racist. I highly recommend that everybody read this. The audiobook is fine. It's an audiobook. It's like not the best audiobook I've ever listened to, but it gets its purpose across. So if you don't want to read this, listen to it. Learn something new. Approach your bias that you probably don't even realize you have, and maybe fix it. That's the video. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought about this haul. Would you have picked a different book to read than the one I picked? And which one? You think I should read another book? Throw it in there. Let me know down in the comments below. If you don't have a comment, leave me an emoji. Leave me a pink emoji. Pink emoji of your choice for my new hair color. At least you know I filmed this on different days. See you in the next video.